I'm Retro Paul. We're going back in time! It's 1980. Star Wars has been a huge success and has revitalised the science fiction genre. Its sequel's already being filmed and fans wait with bated breath for the further adventures of Luke Skywalker and friends. Other films and shows have jumped off the back of this success, and all of a sudden, the space craze is back. What wasn't part of the craze straight away was puppet-based shows. After the success in the 60s of Jerry Anderson's Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet, puppeteering and supermarionation fell out of vogue as live-action sci-fi shows took over the airwaves, making the once popular puppet show concept a distant memory. Step in manga master Go Nagai, prolific author of science fiction, fantasy, horror and erotica. Nice. Yeah, I'd never heard of him either, but someone had and gave him the opportunity to create X-Bomber, known over here as Starfleet, and Sternenflotter in, I'm guessing Sweden, but I don't know for sure. Damn it Wikipedia, if you're going to give me information, be specific. Starfleet was set in 2999, a bit of genius because while other shows and films teased us with films set in the near future, the reality is that now a lot of these dates have passed and we still don't have hoverboards. Do we, Marty McFly? Earth is all peaceful and chilled out, feeling safe because it has a huge Starfleet protecting it, until a crazy arse bitch called Commander Makara wipes out Pluto with her giant earwig shaped ship and threatens to destroy everything else unless Earth hands over F-01. Which Earth might have done if they'd any clue what the hell F-01 actually was. Now here I need to digress a little and talk about Makara. While she was deathly pale and had a metal mask over her left eye, her outfit was a little bit S&M, and if she got a tan and maybe smiled a little, maybe she could have given Chitara a run in the small boy fantasy stakes. I just watched an episode back in preparation for this show and yeah, it's always the crazy ones. Desperate for salvation, Earth sends in the untested secret project, the X-Bomber, one huge, heavily armed battleship that they have hiding on the moon. The crew? Dr. Ben, not to be confused with the cross-dressing Mr. Ben of 70s fame. Next up is Luke Skywalker, Shiro Hagen, who as well as being the main hero of the story, also bears an uncanny resemblance to manga legend Speed Racer. Just Google it. He's joined by his two buddies Barry Hercules, a black man with a huge chin and an even bigger afro, and John Lee. Now, John Lee annoys me. Not because he's fat and ginger. No, it's just because he mooches through the whole series and genuinely doesn't look like he gives a shit, even in the title sequence. I swear he gets shot at from all angles and his blood pressure never goes above 80, despite him looking like the poster boy for cardiac arrest. Rounding off the crew are Princess Leia, Lamia, a classic space princess, and her huge furry bodyguard Kirara, who looks like a cross between a Yeti and a facehugger. Add them to comedy robot sidekick PPA, which stood for Perfectly Programmed Android, and you have the full Star Wars set. Wise mentor? Check. Idealistic young hero? Check. Cocky rebel with attitude? Check. Hairy Wookiee-like bodyguard? Check. Space princess? Check. Comedy droid? Check. But what the hell does John Lee do? While the show's concept had definite Lucas influences, the show still had an element that would make it memorable in its own right. Die-X. The three main leads, Shiro, Barry and Avid Merian, each had their own spaceship, or tank in Mick Hucknall's case, and flew against Makara's minions with little success. When they inevitably started to lose, the ships would combine into Die-X, a giant humanoid robot that would kick ass and save the day. With Shiro in the head leading, Barry in the arms throwing punches and launching missiles, and Paul Scholes walking along in the legs, this was a precursor to the Power Rangers that really captured the imagination. Now on the downside, this meant each show was a little formulaic. They'd always have an excuse to lead the X-Bomber and get in their individual craft, and there would always be a moon for Ron Weasley's fat grandson to drive around on. And ultimately, they'd always have to join up and form Die-X. But in fairness, this was the bit I wanted to see. Even if the joining up footage was the same, repeated over and over again. The same curse that plagued Battlestar Galactica footage. Maybe we just didn't care because we enjoyed it so much. The production values were a little different too. The space background was just a dark blue sheet hanging there, so no blue or green screen special effects. They also never used human hands for close-ups, although they probably should have. And every now and again they'd need to show the team running down a corridor, which was done using crappy rear projection. The show was also a lot darker than most, especially the very kid-friendly Jerry Anderson shows, or similar shows that followed. It had a long-running story that concluded at the end of the series, rather than just episodic adventures. There was a genuine love story involved, although it never detracted from the main mission of finding out what F-01 was and fighting Makara and her sidekick Orion, who, by the way, is the most hilariously designed villain ever in my opinion. The other thing I like about it now, but hated as a kid, was it wasn't a show just about selling toys to kids, unlike Mass that was created in tandem with the toy range to maximise the appeal. You could get odd bits including the Barry Hercules mask, but mercifully, as far as I'm aware, no John Lee toys were ever made. The show clearly had a massive impact. A few years later, Jerry Anderson created Terrorhawks, a terrible concept and mercifully their last venture into puppet-led TV shows. The comparisons are stark. The same method of puppeteering was used, rods instead of strings, and both the characters and the basic plot, that of alien invasion destroying a base, in Terrorhawk's case Mars instead of Pluto, were eerily similar. As mentioned before, its legacy is also apparent in Power Rangers, a show that took the concept of using several smaller vehicles to create a bigger, cooler vehicle and made it a global bestseller in both the TV and the toy market. It also didn't overstay its welcome. With only one series and a logical conclusion to the story, all the loose ends were tied up, and ultimately the show didn't suffer from the fate of many of its contemporaries, that of dragging out the concept too long and running out of ideas long after the novelty had worn off. I doubt the show could have lasted much past the first series, despite its brilliance. Kids shows soon became more about man and his machine, as did a lot of TV shows at the time, like Knight Rider and Street Hawk. At least the way the show ended, those who loved it never had to see it jump the shark and become just more fodder, unlike some of the shows we'll talk about later. Okay, that was Starfleet, and that's what I think about it. If you want to share your thoughts, why not get in touch with us on Twitter? Until next time folks, I'm Retro Paul. So long.